Not that this is like a diss on you, but like I always like I don't feel super like under pressure when I want to talk to you, you know? It's just like, oh, okay, I'm just gonna talk to Jake, so you chill, you know?
This is Editing Guests with Jake, the show where I sit down with fellow editors and we talk about all things editing, editing tools, YouTube, and wherever else the wind takes us.
Today's challenger is Nigel Barros.
Nigel Barros.
Question number 1. What is your favorite NLE?
Premiere Pro, for sure. I do use DaVinci for color grading purposes, but when it comes to cutting, I'm just very fast in Premiere, so I can't switch. At least not yet.
Favorite editing snack to stay in the chair to get through a long edit?
Oh, chili mango. That's like my favorite right now. Like dried mango with like chili powder on it. It's like my favorite thing right now. So good.
When you are editing, do you prefer to sit or stand?
I can only sit here in my office because I have low ceiling. So yeah, I sit.
Kind of a weird question, but do you have a favorite sound effect off the top of your head when you're editing?
I use mouse clicks a lot, like an Apple mouse click, for when I'm like, you know, transitioning between sections. Sometimes I'll use a mouse click. Sometimes I'll use like a switch flip sound effect just to like, you know, like audibly show people that we're switching to a different section of the video. But yeah, probably the mouse click is the one I use the most.
Are you a single monitor or dual monitor kind of guy?
I am a single monitor. I used to use dual monitors, but it was only like laptop screen and then monitor above. But right now I use my MacBook in clamshell mode and I just like blast it all into one monitor.
This is a good one. Mac or PC?
Definitely Mac. Yeah, I've been using Mac for a long time now. I was a PC person, you know, back when I couldn't afford Mac, but now that everything with Apple is a lot cheaper, it's just a no-brainer for creative professionals, I think.
Favorite movie of all time?
Oh my gosh. I'm gonna have to go with like a classic, like The Lord of the Rings, Return of the King. Like I'm a huge Lord of the Rings fan.
I wonder if we can sneak that in later. Film burns, yay or nay?
I hated them for the longest time, but for certain projects, I think that they can work. I used them recently on a video, and I think tastefully they can work. If you use them on every single video, it can get really overdone.
Vertical video, yay or nay?
It was nay for the longest time, but then I interviewed Zach Mayfield, and he said that he got 52,000 subscribers from a YouTube short. So now I'm trying to make YouTube shorts.
Yeah, we could talk about that one more later. I've got so many love hates on that one. Micro Four Thirds or full frame?
Oh, man, dude, that is a hard question right now, especially. You know what? I'm going to say Micro Four Thirds. Even though I'm shooting on a full frame camera, I'm going to say Micro Four Thirds just because I like small cameras and small lenses. So yeah, Micro Four Thirds.
Even though this is an editing show, we will hit that later for sure, because we got to talk about the GH7 at least a little bit. Does a run count if you don't Strava it?
I mean, no. Well, it's weird because like sometimes you Strava it for like the kudos, but sometimes you need to Strava it just for like your own records, you know? But yes, a run does count if you don't Strava it, but you're not going to know how many miles you ran that week if you don't, you know, log it in.
I've recently been getting into running, and I'm laughing because like everyone around me in this space like is already well versed, and I'm like, just had to slide in that little joke. My last rapid fire question, the spiciest of them all: mustache only, yay or nay?
Dude, absolutely yay. I think mustaches are sick. The only thing is that like I say that because the mustache is the only thing that I can really grow like on a consistent basis. Like I can't grow anything here. So it's like I'm gonna preach the gospel of the mustache, even though if I could grow a beard, I probably would.
Those were all of my rapid fire questions. Great answers. Logged a couple of little notes in the back of my brain because we're going to circle back on some of that. But I think to really kick off the more conversational part of this episode, I just want to know, as someone who's done a lot creatively, where editing fits in the process for you. Because you do it all, right?
Yeah. I mean, I shoot and edit, and you know, like I've never paid an editor before, but yeah, I feel like editing is kind of like it used to be just like that last piece of the puzzle that I wasn't necessarily looking that much forward to. And I know that like you're almost the opposite. Like you don't like the filming process, you like the editing process. And I used to just kind of like, I don't know, I didn't put as much effort into my edits as I probably could have, especially if you look at like the like the first few videos on my channel, or even like probably, you know, up to a while. It was just very basic, you know, just cuts, you know, like overlay some videos. And I don't think that like I've really gone leaps and bounds beyond that, but I have tried to like make it a little bit more clean and, you know, a little bit more sophisticated of like an editing style now. But now I kind of feel like it's become like one of my more favorite parts, because a lot of the times, at least in the videos that I'm shooting, I'm not like, I have an idea of what the video is going to look like, but sometimes in the edit, I take it to like a completely different direction, and then it, you know, it turns out like so much better. So I'm falling in love with editing a lot more. It used to be kind of like a chore and I just wanted to get it over with, but now it's becoming a lot more fun, I think. And, you know, the more and more I think of like, man, would I ever pay someone to edit my stuff? I like, there's a part of me that like doesn't want to let go of that part now, just because I actually really like it.
Yeah, as someone who's done it before, it's definitely a tough thing to give up once you kind of get some attachment to it, for sure. So yeah, I've been recommending this to people all the time, but it's like, I would really make sure you're wanting to hire an editor and you're okay with it before you even like go down that road. Like there's lots of other things you could, you know, hire out and do. And editing's such an obvious choice because God, it sucks so many hours of your life away, but I don't know, it is a tough one to give up. Well, and I wanted to talk about that too, because like you said, I think it's interesting, and I think it's funny to hear you say like, oh, you know, like my editing's maybe not as fancy, or it's a little more simple, or whatever that is. But I think that, I mean, and personally, that's kind of what I love about editing is there's such a range, right? I mean, you can go crazy and do silly stuff that honestly a lot of people would completely cringe at, which is something I certainly dabble in. But just like your videos, and I think that maybe this is kind of leading to my next question of simple, clean editing is just as commendable in Jake's eyes in terms of it being just as hard because of, you know, the process to refine, polish, and decide what makes it. So like in your mind, when you start sitting down to tackle a Nigel edit or a client video, you know, what do you think makes that cleaner, more simple approach still engaging or still work well? Like how do you approach that?
Yeah, I mean, for my YouTube videos, I feel like a lot of the times, so I do like I try to like outline my videos now, and so I can sometimes use like, you know, the script or the outline as kind of like a reference point of like how the edit should go, because sometimes I'll like I record things very non-linearly a lot of the time. So like I'll record a part that I know is going to be in the beginning of the video, like after I've already filmed like, you know, 90% of the video. And so sometimes I do have to look back at that outline or like that script and say, okay, where did I want to put everything when I was writing it out in my head? And a lot of the times too, it's just like, especially with my more recent videos, I've been trying to like slow things down a little bit and not do too many jump cuts and just let the music kind of take like the video along instead of, you know, trying to push it along with like, you know, a talking head. So that's kind of how I go about it now, is that like I look at my script or my video outline and I try to piece it together from like my initial concept first. And then if things need to be massaged or like, you know, cut out completely, then I can kind of like do that on the timeline. But I found that like scripting out my video beforehand has actually really helped my whole editing process go a lot smoother, because I actually have like somewhat of a foundation of what I was thinking in the first place, instead of just kind of like shooting a bunch of, you know, clips and then hoping I can put it together later, you know?
Yeah, it almost, I mean, it's your North Star through an edit, right? It's kind of what do I at least think I'm going for? And then how does that continue to work? So okay, I was going to ask if you script your videos, which you already answered. So like, do you think for people who are starting out or trying to kind of get into this, that's something you would recommend? Do you think that's good advice? I think so, but
I mean, I feel like, so when I say script, I write out literally everything that I want inside the video, and I'll title it, like I'll title like each section like TH for like, okay, this is going to be a talking head portion, VO, this is going to be a voiceover portion, but I never read off of a teleprompter. That's one thing that I'm very adamant about not ever doing, because there are some people that are very good at reading off teleprompters, but then there are people that like you can tell that their eyes are moving, like along. And that's, I think, one thing that like can really be disconnecting for your audience is when they can tell that you're not looking at the camera. So I never teleprompt my stuff. And I always give the example, like if you and me were out, like at a coffee shop and my eyes weren't actually looking at you and it looked like I was reading off a script, you'd be kind of off put, like, okay, what is this guy? Like, why is this a performance or whatever? But yeah, I script out my stuff, and I do think that it's important to just like, I think that that Marquez Brownlee from NKBHD does this too, but it's just like, write out bullet points of like the stuff that you want to say, like, keep them on your phone or whatever. You can look at them and then just try to talk as naturally to your camera. And that's a much better approach. But yeah, I kind of like, I write out everything that I want, even B-roll. I'll write that out in like a notes app or on like a Milanote board or something like that. And that's kind of like, yeah, that's what you said. It's kind of like the North Star for my whole video. And I can always go back to that and see, okay, what did I miss? What should I add? Especially like in the timeline, things can look good on a script, but then you look at it in a timeline, it's like, okay, there's something missing here. Or I don't know if you do this, but like, I'm not very good at writing. And sometimes I'll write like, 5 or 6 paragraphs. I'm like, oh, this is a whole video. And then I record it and it's like 2 minutes long or something like that.
Yeah. I've been trying to like figure out a mathematical like word count to minute ratio. And yeah, I haven't sat down and done that, but I've been there before. I've even recently too, and again, my videos are pretty different from yours, so I think I can get away with this, but I will write a script, record it as a voiceover, the whole thing, and throw it in a timeline and start to feel out, okay, right here, I need to do something different, or I need this to be like on camera or whatever. And again, I do a ton of VO, so a lot of it actually stays in the final edit. But yeah, I've found that to be really helpful, which sounds counterintuitive, which is why I hadn't tried it in forever, because I was like, that feels like such a waste of time. But then when I actually have it in a timeline and I'm starting to piece it together, it's like, well, this actually is helping me.
If you like the voiceovers, like the initial voiceover too, you can just keep it, and then you're like, okay, this part needs to be a talking head to like really like hit home a point. You can just cut it out, and then you'll already have like a script basically of what you need to say. That's a good idea.
I love too. I wanted to give a digital high five for going along with this natural talking heads thing. I love when you have your, I don't even know how I would totally describe them. There's probably a technical term, but when you have a cut and then it's like your turn to camera and then you start talking, you do that all of the time. And I think it does just kind of like as a viewer, because you leave that turn or that whip or however you're doing it in the edit, it's like a nice transition. And again, like it feels like a very natural Nigel just talking to us. And I that's really good.
Like I try to have my talking to camera pieces as like natural as they possibly can. Like I really hope that, me talking to you is the same as me talking to the camera. That's always like my goal whenever I make a video. Is I don't want to be too formal or, too relaxed, but just how I am normally.
Which is tough to do. And that's why it's like, I always recommend that to people to try to like find that as quickly as possible, but it's not natural. It takes a lot of practice. I kind of wanted to, again, this is the editing show. So I can't help myself. We got to get nerdy on like software and stuff like that. We've definitely talked about it off camera, about Premiere, DaVinci, all of that stuff. But I think it'd be interesting again to get your perspective for people watching this show. I'm always trying to provide opinions and real use cases as to why people do things the way they do them. So you said earlier you're a big Premiere user. Maybe just talk us through to start, why that's kind of been your choice. And
well, I think it started because I was, kind of poor / cheap back in the early 2000s when I was on PC. We didn't have things like, iMovie or Final Cut Pro, at our fingertips, like a lot of like, the Macintosh people did back in the day. So what I did, and what a lot of other people did too, which probably isn't very ethical, but we pirated Adobe Premiere. And that's how I would edit my videos. Before Adobe Premiere, because I've been making videos for a really long time, like since I was 15, that's 2005 probably. I have been like uploading videos to YouTube. So the very first thing I used was Windows Movie Maker on my PC, and then I switched to Sony Vegas. I don't know if you remember that. I think it's still a thing.
It's still kicking.
Yeah, Sony Vegas was another one, which I feel like Sony Vegas to Premiere was a pretty easy transition because they're relatively similar. So after I pirated Premiere, it crashed my computer so many times though, and so I ended up my buddy knew someone who worked at Adobe, or his mom worked at Adobe, and so we got a good deal on the CS3 suite, and so we went in together and we bought the CS3 suite just because he wanted Photoshop and I wanted Premiere and After Effects. So I used CS3 for the longest time, and then I just kept on upgrading. I think the last one that I had was CS6. Was that the last one?
I don't know. You're asking the wrong guy, but
so yeah, I think CS6 was the last one I had, and then it went to the Creative Cloud, and then I just kept using that. Like throughout the years, I have bounced back and forth with DaVinci, especially with like the the color grading stuff in DaVinci. I've been into that for like a little while now. Still not great at cutting in DaVinci, just because it's, I don't know, like I just feel like why cut in DaVinci when I can cut in Premiere. But yeah, I use like a folder structure in Premiere, and I know that you can do the same thing in DaVinci and Final Cut, but just like the way that Adobe products work just makes sense in my head. And all of like the labeling, so like all of my different stuff is like different colors and all of that, just I don't know, I've just gotten so used to it that I just haven't really, I haven't felt the need to switch to DaVinci. I did back when I was using like my older MacBook, because Premiere wasn't as optimized as it is for these silicone Macs. So I was like, really considering DaVinci when I was using that. But now that I have this, and Premiere works perfectly on these M1 MacBooks, so I haven't really felt any like, strain from, working with Premiere. So yeah, that's kind of like my journey up to, why I still use it today.
Yeah, I think I posted on Threads the other day because someone was asking like, hey, which software would you recommend? And I was like, they're all amazing. They're all terrible. Pick one you like. Like it's just what works for you. And I think that there's so much to be said of you've got your whole workflow and everything in Premiere working for you that, I don't know. I'm a huge advocate of right tool for the right job. So I think it's, again, good to reiterate that and hear what it is that you find useful about Premiere. I will say, and I'm sure you know this, but like I found it to be incredibly therapeutic when I was feeling a little burnt to try something new and switch, just to kind of like, again, make those neural pathways kind of get excited again. So yeah, if you're ever like, man, I just can't even open up Premiere today, it's like that's been something. I do that with Final Cut all the time. If I'm like, I cannot look at Resolve's interface another time, it's like, just open this up. And then ironically, after one edit, I'm like, okay, I want to go back, but it just like keeps it fresh or something in my brain.
Well, there was a time where I was wanting to go to Edius 6. Do you know that?
I don't.
Yeah, so like Edius was like this other like, video editing, software that some people use, but apparently like, back when, people were having a lot of issues with, Premiere and, even Final Cut, they were switching to Edius 6 and using that. And apparently it was like really optimized, and it was like, it worked really well. But yeah, there was a time where I was like, thinking about switching to like anything but Premiere, because I was just so frustrated with it crashing on me all the time. But thankfully now I'm glad that Adobe has seemed to fix whatever was wrong with their software.
Yeah, that's pretty wild, and that's always been my question, is like, it seems like on Apple Silicon it's been way more stable, which again, in my mind, that makes it definitely something to consider, because stability is everything. You got to stay in your timeline. As soon as your brain is getting pulled out from crashes and stuff, it's like, this is not working. I can't edit right.
And I feel like even Premiere, like they've like with the newest updates, it'll auto save for you a lot quicker and more efficiently. So if for some reason you do accidentally switch out or something malfunctions, you can pull up the exact same autosave and you're golden. I don't know how many, like there have been so many edits that I've just completely lost because I brought on like a third party effect and it just froze my whole timeline, and then I just lost the entire thing because I've been editing for 10 minutes and I forgot to press, Command S or whatever.
Right.
So I'm glad that I think people have probably been complaining enough to the Adobe people that they've taken it to heart. Hopefully,
it's too competitive to not take it somewhat seriously. Which it's kind of like cameras. I don't know. Everything's getting so good and refined that you'd be dumb not to take some of this seriously as a company. But where, again, I don't know if there's like sponsorship conflicts of interest or anything like that, but as far as like sound effects and music, I always love to ask people where they're getting that stuff for editing, again, to kind of help guide people who are looking for that type of recommendation as well.
Yeah, I know a lot. I mean, I don't have any sponsorship affiliations with most of the things, but I mean, what I use is, so I use Epidemic Sound a lot. I think they have the biggest library, at least for the music and sound effects licensing sites that I, subscribe to. So I use Epidemic Sound. Audio does have a decent amount of like swoosh and, risers and stuff like that, but their sound effects library is still kind of in its infancy. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend that if you really want to get into doing a lot of sound design. I've heard good things about Artlist too. I don't use them anymore, but I did in the past. So, but right now it's mostly Epidemic Sound, or I'll just record my own, my own sound effect if I really needed it. But I found most of what I need at Epidemic Sound.
So are you using Epidemic for, like there was a lot of really nice whooshes and hits and little accents in your Kershaw knife commercial? Was that all in camera or was that post? It sounded like post, I think.
Yeah, a lot of it was post. I think there were a couple of hits that I used some of the nat sound from when you actually heard the hatchet or the knife go in. But yeah, a lot of that, and some of the times too that I'm just, I'm a total novice right now at sound design. I feel like I'm still learning. But I do know that you can use sounds that are not what the sound is to make, I think I used a punching sound for one of the knives going in because it was a soft piece of wood and I didn't want to have a hard sound for a knife going into a soft piece of wood. So you can use sounds that aren't necessarily what you're looking at to help emphasize it.
1000%. Help emphasize it is exactly right. It doesn't matter what it is. The goal of sound design, in my opinion, I always tell everyone, is make it dramatic. And what I mean by that is just make it way more than it was in real life. And if that's a different sound, if it's louder, it's always better. It feels cheesy sometimes in the timeline, and then you show it to people and they're like, yeah, oh man, I loved your sound design. You're like, dude, that was like a dog barking. That wasn't even this or, whatever. It's just, it's so much fun.
This kind of goes back a little bit to why I like Lord of the Rings so much. And I don't know if you were as much of a Lord of the Rings nerd as I was, but I would almost go to sleep every single night watching the behind the scenes appendices for those movies, and I would always watch the part where they do the Foley, and almost a lot of the times when you're hearing something, it's completely different. It's celery cracking, or it's some dude with metal on the bottom of his shoes, walking over concrete or something. It's they just use whatever trick in the book they can to make you audibly think that that's what you're hearing.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you've ever shot a bow before, but the way Legolas's arrows, impacts, whooshes, all of that sound, that's not how it sounds in real life. But it makes the movie incredible.
Yeah, I know. You're never going to hear that in real life. It's going to be almost silent for the most part. You know what I mean? You're not going to hear those.
And that's it.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. I don't know if I've watched all of the behind the scenes completely through. And it was a long time ago. But yeah, I'm with you. I love that stuff. Those movies are so good.
Like, I'm definitely one of those husbands that, like, whenever we watch it and, like, you know, a scene comes up that I know a little bit of the behind the scenes for, I was like, oh, did you know that, you know, that happened?
Yeah. Yeah. I've been meaning too, now that it's out, to plow through the Dune 2 behind the scenes, because I bet that's going to be so good. Which
I gotta binge that for sure. I love those movies.
that might be my new favorite movie. Like, obviously, I've got like some way longer standing ones, like Lord of the Rings, Empire. You know, those are right in my heart. But like, I don't know. We'll have to see how Dune 2 holds up, because it's a big contender right now.
It's such a spectacle too. Like, it's just such a big movie, and that's just something that I feel like I haven't felt in a long time. You know, when I was in the movie theater, I was just like, this is just epic. You know, like, and it's like, I'm so glad that I saw it in IMAX. You know, I'm just like, this is like, it leaves you with a feeling when you leave the movie theater. You know, it's like, wow, what did I just watch? You know, like, that was insane.
Yeah.
And I don't feel that a lot of the times when I leave a movie theater.
Yeah, I went twice in IMAX, which is saying something for the father of a 2-year-old, because I don't go to movies anymore. And I was like, I have to see this again, and made it happen. No, and I was going to say too, totally, we're just like going off on movie Lord of the Rings nerdiness, which I love. But I was trying to explain to my friend the other night, because we were having like a game night playing Settlers, and we were just listening to like the Lord of the Rings soundtrack in the background. Just describe a nerdier picture, but he was saying that he was like, man, I just feel like we haven't had a movie like Lord of the Rings in forever. And I was like, well, dude, did you go see Dune? He was like, no, I haven't seen Dune. And I was like, I think Dune is that level. And he was like, no. And I was like,
Yeah.
I think so. And so I don't know. Like, what do you think? I feel like it's up there in the feeling.
Yeah, it's definitely in like that same realm. You know, I personally don't think that we're ever going to get a movie series like Lord of the Rings again, because I've never, and you know, this is just because I've watched like the behind the scenes so many times, but it's just like the people that worked on that movie were just like a different kind of passionate. You know what I mean? Like, they were probably working for, you know, pennies on the dollar, but they were just so passionate about that book, you know, like that book series, and that it was like, you know what, I'll work day and night to make sure that this, you know, is the best that it possibly can be. And I feel like, but like, I definitely do think that, like, you know, just because Dune didn't, it didn't take Dune 3 years to, you know, film and refilm and edit and all that kind of stuff, it's still one of like those, you know, you can tell that the people that are working on it are still very passionate about making this good, right? And I feel like that comes through in a movie subconsciously sometimes, that like, you don't necessarily feel it on other blockbuster movies, you know?
No, I totally agree. And I was just curious, because I was like, I feel like I'm crazy for even like voicing this, you know, like it feels like blasphemy. But really quick too, I have been so fascinated, and your channel I think is similar to that, of just like, you know, how simple can you keep it? Because when you think about movie editing, right? I mean, like, there's obviously special effects, but like someone who is doing the edit is literally just placing footage, right? Like, they're literally just like, what is the part here that matters? Where's the in and out points? You know, why? I mean, essentially they're picking frames. And again, I think you do this really well, and it's something I'm trying to, because like I feel like I've gone in the opposite spectrum, where it's like, how crazy can I get to like keep you interested? But it's like, it would be a fun challenge to do a Nigel style video or a Lord of the Rings style video, where it's just like, what if you didn't have any of the modern tools? How do you keep people engaged? And I don't know, do you have any thoughts on that?
I mean, there are parts, because like, you know, like I look at like your stuff and it's like, man, I wish I could edit like Jake does, you know, like I don't know how you like have the time to do all this type of stuff. And but like there is like, you know, part of me is like, man, if I didn't need to like color grade, and I didn't need to put, you know, little, like visual effects graphics on my videos, I could probably cut one of my videos in iMovie, you know, like I could probably cut one of my videos in like, you know, Windows Movie Maker, because a lot of the times it is just a timeline with footage on top, or like, you know, footage over, you know, like a voiceover or something like that. I would never actually go back to one of those editing systems, obviously, but like I feel like my edits can be simplistic enough to where it's like I don't need, you know, a crazy, you know, transition pack or a crazy, you know, like all these crazy effects. I can, you know, just work on like a timeline, and as long as I can stack my timeline, I'm good, you know.
I think a lot of people have been forced into that in the Final Cut space for that very reason, where it's just like there's not a lot of graphical tools to enhance it. So then it's like, how do I just focus on the story and the sound design and all of that? Which again, I mean, people are making fantastic edits doing those things. I appreciate the compliment, but I mean, sometimes I feel it's just like, you know, it does feel a little cheesy. And I mean, I like it, but yeah, there's something to be said about like, I can watch a show, I can watch a movie, and there's no glitch transition. You know, like the craziest I've ever seen is like Star Wars had all of the wipes in the prequels, you know, like those were the craziest transitions I've seen in a movie. And that's not crazy, you know?
Well, it's like I've always wanted to like try to do like those natural, you know, camera pan transitions, you know. Those ones are always hard to do when I'm the only one operating the camera, you know. So it's like I need to like have like a stick on like my tripod head and then like spin it or something like that.
With like a string on it, you're like, whoosh.
Well, it's funny, like one of my good friends, he's a skate filmer, and he kind of, I'm not going to say that he pioneered that, but like, you know, back in like the early 2000s, he would, you know, do like a rolling long lens shot, and then like, you know, like the skater would land the trick, and then he would like just pan really quickly up to the sky, and then he would start the next one where he pans down from the sky and then like is doing another rolling long lens shot. So it's all, you know, he just makes like that crossfade transition, and it just looks like one continuous shot. I've always thought those looked cool, but it's like I don't know how to implement those when I'm just sitting down in my office, you know.
I think too, and I'm curious on this, like when I look at a movie edit or something, and this is something I've really been trying to work on lately, is what is the action that is happening, and really refining and getting aggressive with like what exactly needs to be shown here. And I think you do that really well. And I don't know, is there any tips you'd give new people on kind of what you're looking for with that, or how you approach, again, showing just the action and what that means?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like for like my more like recent videos where, you know, I do implement a lot of, you know, voiceover, I do think that like, you know, the script can help, you know, dictate what you need to show. But sometimes like showing it before you even, you know, start talking about it can help, you know, ease the audience into what you're, you know, going to be talking about next. Like I do kind of think of it like just, I guess, kind of linearly, when, you know, say if I'm talking about like the dynamic range of a camera or something like that, I'll make sure that like I have a shot that is going to, you know, exemplify the dynamic range of whatever camera I'm shooting on, you know. Like I probably won't be talking about dynamic range when I'm, you know, sitting in, you know, like inside of my office with like, you know, my lighting or whatever. But yeah, you know, that's kind of how I think of it. Sometimes it is just, you know, like how it feels in the edit too. I know that like that's probably something that you deal with too, where it's just like, oh, it just feels good here, so I'm just going to put it, you know, it makes sense. And like I do think that like, you know, when I first started making videos, I relied really heavily on the music to like, you know, dictate the feeling of it, you know. And so it's like if I wanted someone to feel something, and this, you know, like this piece of music was going to help with that, then I wanted like my visuals to like, you know, be cued because of the music, I suppose.
Dude, the way you did the music and how it swelled in and out on your the follow focus mountain biking video.
Oh yeah.
I was watching that the other day, and I was just like, how is this so relaxed, yet we're watching mountain biking footage, the music's like coming in and kind of flowing with it. Like I don't know, that was so well done.
Yeah, thanks, man. I appreciate it. That's been kind of and like I can't really say that like that style of video is like my own. Like I get really inspired by other non-filmmaking related channels. And I'm just like, man, I love the feeling that I get when I watch these videos, and I want that same type of feeling for my audience when they watch mine, you know. Like I don't think that like I have to be super, hype train all the time when I talk about camera stuff. I can just, make it almost like a relaxing, content piece about, the DJI Focus Pro or whatever,
What are some of those channels? What are those ones that you get inspired by?
Let's see. Now that you asked me, I'm probably going to blank. I really like, I guess he technically is kind of a filmmaking channel, but he's much more of a photography channel. Teo Crawford, do you watch him?
I don't. I'm going to have to write that down.
He's just got like this soothing Austrian voice, and he just kind of just like takes you through his day in like Austria or wherever he is, and he just like photographs stuff. Love watching his stuff. And it's just like, I don't really even care about film photography, to be honest. Like, I don't really care about photography that much, to be honest, like, digital photography, but like, I'll just watch his videos all the time. And it's just like, they just soothe, and it's just like, I love those. I like, I'm trying to like think of other people. As soon as we like hang up, I'm going to be like, oh wait, Jake, this guy.
Here's 6 other people I need to send you.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe, I don't know, I don't want to plant stuff in your brain, but maybe Craig Adams. He's also very similar in that vein of just chill.
Yeah, I love watching Craig. Man, who's another person?
Yeah, let me know if you think of them. But then also too, I wanted to ask like that's more specifically the chill vibes. But is there some other people right now that you just absolutely look up to for like general inspiration, or people that are really tickling your brain lately on YouTube specifically? I guess it can be anything, but
yeah, I just thought of someone for that last question. He is a filmmaking channel, but he like never talks about cameras like ever. And his name's Noah. His YouTube channel is Noah's Nostalgia.
okay.
If you ever just want to just like vibe out, he just has like the most pretty visuals and like the most like calming music in the background. And I think he shoots on Blackmagic cameras, because like that's the only video I've seen where he ever has talked about a camera, is like, I really like Blackmagic. And then it's just like these beautiful visuals. But yeah, he's got a lot of good stuff that I like to watch. As far as other people that have been kind of inspiring to me, I feel like I really do like Danny Gewurtz's stuff. His stuff is really good. There's another guy that doesn't post very often. His name's Corey Robinson, but his stuff is just beautiful. And I love listening to his voiceovers, because he's an audio dude, and he has like the Sheps like CM whatever mic, like that blue microphone that's like, $5,000 or whatever. And it's just like, it's just the crispiest audio. And who else? I love Lewis Potts, even though, it's not really in the same vein of like a lot of the other guys that I'm talking about. Like, I love just like learning from Lewis. Yeah, I'm sure I'm subscribed to like thousands of people, but those are the few that come to my head.
No,
and then you, obviously, Jake. I like watching your stuff.
No. Not required to say it. Not true. No, I ask because I'm the same way, right? It's like you have so many people you subscribe to, but just I love knowing kind of like who's tickling your brain and who's inspiring you, because it fluctuates.
If you want to know like raw, unfiltered, like who I'm actually watching, it has zero to do with filmmaking, and it's completely 180 degree of what I was just talking about, of like soothing. That's
who I want to know.
Okay, but this is not going to be like interesting to anyone that isn't a skateboarder, but he's kind of like taking the skateboarding YouTube industry by storm. His name is Joa, and he goes by Gifted Hater on YouTube. And he's just kind of a troll, and he just trolls on like the skateboarding industry. And if you're a skateboarder, you probably know who he is, and he's hilarious. I love watching his stuff. So whenever he posts something, I don't care what it's about, I'll grab some popcorn and I'll just watch it.
Those people are so special that you're like, I don't even care. Like, you could be talking about anything, and I'm here for it. Yeah. I've never actually surprisingly been big into skateboarding.
I mean, you have a really sick skate park there in Boise, dude.
I know we do. Yeah. I've I've thought about it. Maybe after I like really get addicted to running, that'll be the next one that I pick up.
Dude, I'll come over, dude. I'll come over to Boise and teach you how to drop in.
I don't know. I'm like looking over at my notes because I'm just like, honestly, I'd rather talk about this stuff. But
Yeah.
one thing that I did want to ask you when we were looking at your latest video, I've got lots of questions written down for that. But I think one thing that might be kind of interesting to people is that last piece when you did the little craft brand spotlight. I can't remember the gal's name.
Yeah, Aida.
Yeah, her company, which also her stuff looks super cool. But it was about 2 minutes long. Do you know roughly what you started with before you chiseled that bad boy down to 2 minutes? Because it was a really tight edit, in my opinion.
Yeah. It was like really helpful because like I mean like I don't know how many like doc style interviews you've done in the past, but like I was really impressed with I got there, I filmed like the B-roll of her, her making her stuff, and I shot some of the stuff that she had already created. And then we got to like the sit down interview portion, and like she just gave me perfectly executed answers. And like we never had to like, like, oh, can you like say that again? It wasn't like, I gave her a little bit of a prompt where it's just like, hey, when you answer, make sure that you kind of ask the question as you're answering it, or you answer it in a way that you don't need to hear the question. And she knew exactly what I was saying. And I was just like, she nailed it. And I was just like, wow, well, I got through all my questions and I was assuming that I was going to have to like massage it a little bit or help you, get the kind of responses that I was wanting, but you did it perfectly. So that made it a lot easier, to be honest. And so I ended up asking just like some extra questions just because I felt like she thought that it was going to be a lot longer of a process. So I was like, I asked some extra questions in there just to throw it in. I didn't end up using those questions and answers, but I think that helped a lot. I have worked on that style of a video before where it's just like, man, how am I going to cut something like, usable out of all of this interview footage? And I think that makes it a lot harder. I shot something with my buddy in Texas where it's just like, the guy was just really nervous on camera and he like could just not get a cohesive answer out, which is hard. Like, I mean, like you and I talk to cameras all the time, but when you aren't used to it, it's like kind of, daunting. But yeah, Aida killed it. And so that made it a lot easier for me because I already kind of like I already had the song in mind. Like I had found this song, and like that's something that I also do. Like I have a music bed subscription and like audio. And so I'll make playlists about the projects that I'm working on. And then I'll just start listening to music and just, saving it to those playlists. And when I found that one, I was like, okay, this would work really well for the video with Aida. So I had that saved. And so I already kind of had that song in mind. And yeah, it was just like I used her interview as kind of like the blueprint for the whole video, which I think is what most people do when they're like editing that style of a video. And yeah, I tried to break up the interview a little bit so it wasn't just, constant talking. And, just, ducked the audio where it needed to be ducked. And yeah, it kind of like went together very naturally. So it was a relatively easy edit to put together, I think.
Yeah, that's awesome. Like you're filming it and editor Nigel is just like, dude, I'm so pumped right now. This is going to be such an easy cut. Oh.
Yeah, I feel like when you have good talent, that like makes things so much easier.
I was going to say too, with your music thing you said, that is a fantastic tip. And whether you're an editor or a filmmaker, like at least all of the ones that I've used, every service these days has an app. Download those apps, listen to music, make playlists. Like you will thank yourself for having just at least some level of prep on things that you like or dislike, because finding music takes forever, dude.
Yeah, like I love that about like Music Bed especially. Like you can listen to it on their app, like the Music Bed app, or they have like they have a playlist on Spotify too of all like the new stuff that they've just like integrated into the website, so you can just like listen to that. And that's kind of like you can convince yourself that you're doing work by going on a long drive just to listen to music.
This video is not sponsored by MusicBed, but if you guys would like a discount on the link in the description.
I mean, I do have like I'm not an ambassador. I think I'm a friend of MusicBed, if that's what it's called.
Friend of the brand, yeah.
And you are too, right? Yeah.
Yep. Recently did that. Yeah, it was funny because like you, I pretty much only used Epidemic strictly for stem splitting, which I've talked about this a lot. Don't need to beat a dead horse, but was excited when they asked, because that was right at the same time that a lot of my tools that I use started getting the ability to split out stems. And it's like, I've always loved music bed music. I've used it before, but it was like it was a hard sell for me and like my brand to be like, oh, I love this, but I'm such a believer in like scoring and splitting out music that like this doesn't really fit. And then that happened. And I was like, oh, well, hey, now you can do it with these tools. Here's what I recommend. And the music's amazing. So
like I've always felt that about Music Bed too, is that like I'm not trying to like, gas them up too much, but it's not like this is a sponsored episode, but like I just like I've always felt that like the caliber of music is just so much higher on Music Bed. And so it's like whenever I'm working on something that like I really want to like look like like look and sound super good, I always use a Music Bed song. And now that they have like that new like AI like search for a song or whatever, I've been using that like crazy. It's like, okay, I like Maggie Rogers, I'm gonna put in one of her songs and see if I can find something like close to it,
yeah. Oh, what's that folk artist that my wife loves? Wow, Noah Khan. I like was making her a Mother's Day video, and I typed that into Music Bed, which not that I needed to. I could have just used one of his songs, but I was just curious, and like all the music that came up sounded like very much like his, and I was like, that's awesome. That's such a cool feature.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I would say too, if you are on Mac and like you have ever wanted to split out a song, like get Logic, call me up. I'll show you how to use the feature because it's so easy. And then you can export each track individually as a stem. Like it's killer, dude. I've been using the crap out of that because Resolve has it, but the interface is not nearly as good. And so a lot of times I'll just throw it in Logic and then get like 4 tracks, separate tracks, which is what you would get from Epidemic. And just allows you to be like, I just want the guitar, or I just want the drums here or whatever. So
that's awesome.
I do want to say I always love doing this. That particular video I threw into Resolve, did my cut analysis just to kind of see like roughly how fast your pace is on that one. And you averaged like a cut every 4 seconds, which is pretty long in the tooth for like YouTube standards, but felt, again, very clean, very natural. Yeah, I don't know if you have any comments on that or like the pacing of it, but
it all kind of like, depends on where I feel like what the final product is going to live on. And I knew that like if I was going to like, show you how I make like a little, spotlight piece with my G85, I didn't want to make it so that like, I was like, oh, this is going to be perfect to like live on a YouTube short or something like that. I wanted something for Aida that she could use on like her, Instagram, So that was kind of like, my end goal was just like, okay, I don't care if this is going to be like a, this doesn't need to be like a Mr. Beast, like, super quick cut. It just needs to be something that like she'll be happy with. And so that was kind of like my mindset going into it, was just like, okay, I'm just going to let this like, play out the way that like she spoke on camera. And I think that like, I mean, she was really happy with it. She texted me and she's like, oh my gosh, I'm crying after watching this. I love it so much. So it's like, that's all I really care about, is like, if, the client actually likes it. And I think that's something to be said about like, what I'm trying to do with, this series of like, trying to, make spec ads and actually make stuff with, cheaper cameras, is that like, you have to like, make sure that like the client is happy at the end of the day, even if it's not going to work well on YouTube. It's not about the YouTube algorithm. And that's why I always like, at least on, like those types of videos, I put it at the end. So it's like, if you don't want to watch the final product, you don't have to, but like, this is what I did with all of the gear that I was just talking about,
But to your point, it fits, which I think is important for everyone to think about, no matter what you're filming, editing, whatever. It's just what is the end result, and does it fit? Like, because it fit with her brand perfectly, like super fast cuts on this cute little crafty short, makes 0 sense. Again, I always like to try to give, I'm trying to give, right? Like open up people to our brains and the way we think about things. If you had to give someone who's kind of just starting in this process, like some kind of editing tip, like what have you found to be the most helpful when it comes to like editing specifically?
I almost think that like the things that would hinder me the most if I was going to, tackle an edit is not being organized. So having a good folder system where you're completely organized with your entire project, I think that's huge, because, the idea of like trying to pull clips from all these different places, all these different hard drives, that would just fry my brain and I wouldn't even be able to start. So that's the first thing I'd say is like make sure that you're really organized with your project. Figure out like a folder system that works for you. Because I think a lot of people have like a different way that works well for them. And
Do you have kind of some standard folders that you use out of curiosity? I know I do.
I've seen other people's folder structures. I'm just like, man, a lot of people do it very differently than I do. But like the way that I do it is like whenever I start a project, like each video gets a folder. And then within that folder, I have a project folder, a raw folder, and a thumbnail folder. And sometimes even like an extras folder, just in case I have like extra crap that I need to like throw in there. And then in the raw folder, I'll have multiple different folders depending on how many different cameras I shot on, or screen captures, or then like the music goes in there as well. So there's a bunch of different folders. And then like I open my Premiere project, I make sure that the project is going to be saved in the project folder of that video project, and then I just kind of pull all of the folders into my media pool, and then they're just all there how I like them. So if I'm looking for S5 talking head stuff, I know exactly which folder to go to, and I pull that into the timeline. So that's how my brain works, and that's how I keep it organized. So yeah, that's kind of how I do it. And then, yeah, another thing I think is I think what helped me a lot is just kind of watching how other people pace their videos is really helpful, because if you're trying to be like a Mr. Beast, super hype video, you need to like understand how he like, it's just like you did that cut analysis. Like I did 4 seconds was like my average. You should probably do that with like the people that you're trying to edit. Like, not that you should, cut, copy, paste exactly someone else's editing style, but I think it does help. I watch, people like, a Teo Crawford that I was telling you about, and like he has very like long drawn out cuts, and he lets the music swell, and he lets the music almost like dictate a lot of his stuff, which is what I do as well. So I like to gleam as much as I can off of how other people that I respect and like, so that's another thing that I would say is that like don't be afraid to emulate somebody else as opposed to like just imitating them, I guess.
Dude, those were killer tips. I agree with all of those. Yeah, and I think again we've definitely done some rambling. We've got off on tangents. We're getting a little long here, and I don't want to keep you for too long. But before you go for today, again, I've been selfish. I'm always talking about editing and that kind of stuff. I want to give you a little Nigel time because I know you love talking about cameras and stuff. That being said, I want to talk about it as well. We got to talk about the GH7, man, which you and I both have probably a lot to say on. I, the other day, posted, and I'm curious what you think about this because I felt like it was just like such an interesting thought, but I said, what if the GH7 had come out when the S5 had come out?
Well, like the S5 or the S5 II?
I guess we could say either, but imagine a world where it had come out when the S5 had come out. Like say Panasonic had not gotten distracted with full frame and they just said, we are going to make a Micro Four Thirds camera that has features like the GH7 has, and came out when the S5 did. Like,
yeah, I mean, I think that could have made it a lot harder for people to, I don't know, to switch to full frame initially, especially if the S5 was their option, like the original S5. Not that it was a bad camera, but like the GH7, how it stands right now is like almost a perfect camera for a video shooter unless you need the full frame look or better low light performance, which was my only gripe was like, of all the things that they put in it, like the only thing that you're still going to lack is like good low light. And, you can argue about, depth of field and, like out of focus areas all you want. But like, I feel like that stuff is overcomable. The thing that you can't overcome is like low light performance. And that's what's always just going to be better on a full frame camera, just because the pixels are bigger and all that kind of stuff. But like,
physics.
Yeah, exactly. Like I could have definitely been happy with a GH7 if it came out 2 years ago. I still kind of want a GH7 even now, The only video that I've watched was Patrick Tomasso's video where he starts it off with the Crosby, Stills and Nash song in the beginning. I'm just like, oof, man, that looks so good. Like this is just getting like the vibes right now.
For sure.
But yeah, like I really do want to get my hands on one. I don't know if I'll buy one right now. I'm kind of a cheapskate and I'll probably wait until it's, come down in price a little bit. But and I do have an S5 2X, which is still, doing everything that I need it to do. And it's also like, this is a side tangent, but my S5 2X is a very rugged camera. I had a tripod malfunction today and it like fell over onto a wall and like, it's still fine. Like these things can take a hit and not even skip a beat, which I love. That's another thing that I love about Lumix cameras. I feel like if I had like an R6 or something like that and it fell, it probably would be broke, but I don't know.
Yeah, I think I'm with you. And honestly, I'm like playing that stupid game in my head. I'm like, man, I really can't buy this, but I want it just to like play with it because I'm with you. Like the low light's always been a thing. Honestly, though, I don't know. It'd be interesting to play with a new Micro Four Thirds camera because I feel like my complaint with low light usually a lot of times was a little bit out of inexperience because like anything you do professionally, usually you've got some kind of lighting going on, and even like a small little RGB light, depending on what shot you're going for, is usually enough light for even Micro Four Thirds, depending on what you're doing. If you're doing like low light dock stuff, maybe not, but...
Sorry, people. My AirPods died. I got my Koss Sporta Pros.
Oh, dude, those are sick. You should have wore those the whole time. Are you kidding me?
I saw some like documentary filmmaker back in like 2005 using Koss Porta Pros. And so that's what prompted me to get the Sporta Pros because they were basically the same and they actually sound really good. I use them for mixing sometimes.
Audio gear has not gotten like significantly better for many years. Like it's been good for a while. What were we talking about? Oh, we were talking about the GH7 and low light.
Oh yeah, and my beef with people that like claim that they need a lot of these different things, but then I go and look at the work that they do and just like, you're lighting everything. Like you're not doing any like run and gun dock work in low light. Like you're lighting everything. You're, and I can empathize with people who, shoot weddings and shoot, like run and gun corporate events where like the lighting, is not always guaranteed. I understand that like full frame, better low light, that makes sense. But like, I don't know, if you're just making YouTube videos or you're lighting everything that you do, I feel like a GH7 with, the 10 to 25 f1.7 would probably be enough for you, but, to each their own.
That's what I'm curious to play with it because again, I've been out of Micro Four Thirds since the S5. I still have my G7, which I just use as my little like point and shoot camera with that 15 mil. It's so juicy.
Oh yeah.
But as far as like video goes, it'd be interesting to try like a new one and see how it does. Because again, my theory is that just like for anything I shoot would not matter. Like I've got lights in here. Most of my stuff is in the shed. If not, I'm probably grabbing something that I'd be okay with mixed results or even noise. I don't know. But again, my biggest beef is I made the jump with the S5 because I was like, I want full frame, do this, blah, 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 blah. And I'm so far in that it's like, I'm so tired of doing this dance. I'm just like probably going to stick with this system for a very long time.
The one thing that is nice about Micro Four Thirds, if someone was, wanting to get into the GH7, is that like lenses are more abundant in the Micro Four Thirds and they're smaller and like they're cheaper, like, so there's more of them. They can be smaller, depending on which one you get, and they're a lot cheaper than full frame glass. So like you could be spending a hefty amount, for some people, for a lot of people, $2,200 is a pretty, it's a pretty big, a price tag for a Micro Four Thirds camera, but you do get the benefit of like, okay, I can get those Sigma primes for like a couple $100 each or whatever, as opposed to like, one of the, you have to spend like $500 for one of those, those Lumix S primes or whatever. So you are saving money in different ways by, not having to spend a bunch of money on lenses.
I'll hit you with a quick anecdote too. The one time I made a backpacking film when I had a quick hot streak of like, maybe I could be Craig Adams because I love backpacking. I have not done it since, but I brought my GH5S, the was it 8 to 16, the one that's like the 16 to 35 equivalent, which ended up being the only lens I used that trip, ironically. But I also had, I'm pretty sure I also had my 15 and the like super plasticky 45 to 150, I think it is. And like, I mean, I had 3 lenses on a backpacking trip and it didn't feel that bad. Whereas like if I go backpacking now and I'm taking one of my full frame cameras, it's like, all right, which lens am I taking that's on the camera? And I'm not bringing any others.
I know. And I think that there's something to be said about just like the smaller your camera kit is, the easier it's going to be to create content with. You may not look as cool on set, and, if you have clients or something like that, they'll probably be wondering why you're, coming with their, like a small little camera. But when it comes to creating content for YouTube, I've always thought that like an FX6 is not the play, an Ursa is not the play. Like you need to have something that like is easy to make content with. And that's, going back to the GH7, like a lot of GH6 owners are just like, okay, the GH7 has almost everything that the GH6 has, except for the phase detect autofocus, the internal RAW, and, the 32-bit float with that external thing. And so as far as like image quality outside of like the RAW, like they don't really see the the merit in upgrading, I think. But if you do need that, that continuous phase detect autofocus, the 32-bit float does only come with that $500 XLR adapter, which is kind of, that's an extra cost. And then the internal RAW, it's ProRes RAW, and so it's only really beneficial for people who shoot or who edit in Final Cut Pro. Like I can use it in Premiere, but like it's barely RAW controls, like it's just, I think all I can do is like change the white balance or something. I don't know. So it's like, that was the weird thing. And then there's Arri Log C, which I think you and me and Matt were talking about that a little bit, where it's just like, is Arri Log C actually going to be better than just doing a color space transform, from Vlog to Arri Log C? Or is it like, does it really give you more latitude or, better colors or whatever, So there's a lot of things that are still up in the air where it's just like, okay, the jury's still kind of out of whether those things are enough to, really warrant it, or is it just the phase detect and, 32-bit float if you want that $500 XLR adapter.
Yeah, in my mind, the GH7, GH6 scenario feels almost identical to the S5 II or S5 IIX and S5 thing, where it's like, I've definitely found a lot of things on the S5 II that are a lot nicer than the S5, but it's all small little piddly things that really don't matter. And it's just that autofocus, right? Which is why it took me forever to buy one, because I was like, dang, I was an early adopter on the S5 and I really, really like this camera. I sat around for forever just being like, I can't justify it for the autofocus. And as soon as I bought it, I was like, yeah, I should have done this for forever ago. But it's like, why wasn't that just there the first time?
But yeah, it's like the image quality like is the same. And that's, I think, what people are kind of, I don't know, they're frustrated with, because it's like, well, I want something like, you need to give me like 15 stops of dynamic range, or just give me something else, like, so I can, I sympathize where it's just like, okay, it's like, if you get a GH6 and a GH7, put them side by side, chances are you probably aren't going to be able to tell which one is which unless people start moving and the autofocus drifts, I think Matt was talking about this a little bit too, where it's just like the GH7 is kind of, if you're a legacy Micro Four Thirds user, like you'll be stoked to upgrade to it. But, people like you and me who have the S5s with like the phase detect, it's a harder sell for sure. And I just feel like it almost came out too late in some cases. And I also think that, okay, I talked about this on my most recent solo podcast, but like, why didn't they do the Japan trip for the GH7? Why did they do it for the S9? You know what I mean?
Dude, I don't know either. It feels like that's what should have happened. And like,
it was like this quiet little, oh, here's the GH7, like at Cinegear. It's like, okay, this would have gotten people a lot more stoked than the S9 where you flew a bunch of people out to Osaka. You know what I mean? Like fly them out to Osaka and give them GH7s and then people will start, getting hyped on a camera again. I don't know.
Well, I think too, like that's what I found so interesting about all of that drama is that like I do think a lot of the stuff that came out of that is we're asking good questions. And I think at the end of the day, it really is just like the systems we're a part of probably need to be questioned a little bit. Again, coming from the corporate world, all of that has always felt strange to me. Like we take bribery classes and all of them like raise red flags when I watch non-sponsored review videos. It's like, dude, I get told that this is wrong when I'm like learning about it at work, but again, it's a very gray area. So it's not like totally black and white. But it just kind of like sends up flags. But what I wanted to say is I think, again, all of it was spurred by exactly what you're saying, where it's like, if you're going to fly everyone out to Japan, like release a camera like the GH7 that like people will be excited about. And then like, I feel like they would have completely dodged this whole debacle and we would have just like blissfully gone on ignorantly.
Yeah. I mean, like I mentioned that before, because it's just like, this isn't about Panasonic releasing a subpar camera because they've done that before. Like, they've released bad cameras, in my opinion, but it's the fact that they released a subpar camera and like everybody was trying to like say that it, was something that it's not. And I feel like even if they had just done the exact same thing, but don't fly a bunch of like filmmaker YouTubers out there or like video YouTubers out there. This isn't a video camera. In my opinion, the S9 is as much of a video camera as my iPhone is. You know what I mean? Like my iPhone can take really great video too, but like I don't use it for that. I use it for daily tasks. And the S9 is a video camera, but I feel like all the features that they were really trying to like tote were like the Lumix app and like the LUTs that you can use for photos. And so that's where I just think that like they missed the mark a little bit. It's like fly a bunch of like really influential like Instagram photographers out there next time, if you're going to be releasing a photography camera that just happens to have some video features, not a bunch of like these video dudes that are just going to be bummed that it overheats.
Right. Well, and to play like not really devil's advocate, but like just to make another point, like release that app, do a firmware update on the S5 too, dude, I'm going to be stoked. Because again, like I don't do it often, but I could totally see an argument for a light video codec that I could bounce to my phone. Like there's times where it's like, wow, my 3x lens on my iPhone looks like a turd, but I've got my camera in my backpack, which I can punch into 70 mil, get a really high quality zoomed in shot, bounce it over to my phone. Like that'd be sick. And I don't see why they couldn't add that in firmware, but I'm not a camera engineer. But
yeah, I don't know. I mean, that seems like the perfect thing for like, anyone who makes, TikTok and Instagram content, if they had like this little light codec that you can send right to your phone, edit it in CapCut or whatever, and just call it a day.
Any other thoughts there that you're feeling extra passionate about? I feel like I just got a lot out there that I hadn't talked about with someone that I could nerd out about with. So I'm feeling good about all of that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I have a lot of opinions on, cameras and, just like the state of like, cameras that we're in. But I think at the end of the day, like it doesn't necessarily affect me too much about what camera is coming out and what the new features are because, I'm probably going to end up buying a GH3 again at some point and making another video about it. You know what I mean? Just because like, I don't know, right now I'm kind of in this space where it's just, I love using these old cameras that I had back in the day. And even with that G85 video that we were talking about, I made that video specifically because I was like, okay, I was looking back at some of the footage that I got with the G85 back in 2021 and it wasn't bad, but it's just like, okay, have I gotten better since then? And I think that I have. And so that's kind of what I'm going to be trying to do more on my channel is that like, okay, I used this camera back in, 2017. I'm going to use it now and see if I can, make it look that much better because I have that much more experience. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Dude, thank you so much for coming on the show today. This has been so fun. And I know we could literally go for the rest of this Friday, but I feel like I need to stop sucking away your day. Where can people find you on the internet? We need more Nigel fans because I love your stuff.
Yeah, you can check me out on YouTube. Just search my name, Nigel Barros. That's Barros. And then I have a second channel too, which you can just search Nigel Barros 2, TOO. And then, yeah, you can find me on Instagram, same name. You can hit me up on Instagram too. I'm not like, if you got any questions, I always love nerding out about camera stuff.
Thank you so much. And guys, we'll see you in the next episode. Later, Nigel. Thanks, man.
Later.